I'll call our council meeting to order. And just a reminder about some delegations. At 10:30, we're hoping to have Stuart, 10:45 Cole, at 11 o'clock Amanda Davis from Bassano, and 11:30 public hearings. So we'll get started with the adoption of last meeting's minutes. Clarence moves their approval, their adoption. Any problems? All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Are there any post-agenda items today? Seeing none, I'll ask for adoption of the agenda. Anne-Marie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And I just realized I forgot to even make sure we are being live streamed. Do we know who our moderator is today, Matt? Todd?
Good morning, Molly. Although I was a little bit late to get Clarence going, we just kept her rolling, so you are good to go.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd. Is there any anything in your queue for questions for us today?
No questions in the queue. We do have 11 people viewing today, so that's exciting for our last council meeting of this term.
Right. All right. Well, as always, you can interrupt me if somebody comes online with a question for question period. So we'll move on to is Stuart online yet? I don't think he is. All right. Guess we can go to item 10.1 then, Todd, for you, if that works. The soil conservation policy. It was wonderful to see a 2-page policy. I was worried, and then I realized you were involved.
Is it okay if I run down quick?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll go on to 11.1 just in, while we're waiting, the PD report. Should be oh, maybe it's longer than. Is there anything that we need questions about on that report? We'll have opportunity to have our planning and development staff with us later, if there is, but. Thank you. Tracy.
Yes, Maria, I was wondering if you could clarify me under your construction permits. You talk about the electrical permits for Solarcraft, or not Solarcraft, sorry, for the Brook Solar project. And you talk about the project value calculation. And I just did not fully understand what that all meant.
Sure, yeah. So when Elemental Energy did their first phase, there was, and I wasn't around for this, but I'm sure you remember some discussion about the value of the electrical permit and how that was calculated. Our schedule of fees bases the value of electrical permits on the value of solar panels. And since the first electrical permit was issued, they have removed the value of the actual solar panel. So this allows companies to you know, to get some more expensive, I guess, panels or try some new technology without affecting the electrical permit price, because essentially that part of their project does not make any more work for the inspector.
Thank you.
I do remember that discussion at the time. It was quite a lengthy one because we had nothing to base it on. So that's probably good news going forward. Are there any other questions on that report? Seeing as we have Todd here with us, we'll go back to Todd. Thanks, Maria. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you, Madam Reeve.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was debating whether I could do it from upstairs, but it's kind of better, I think, maybe to do it with you guys today. So I am happy to present this policy for information today. I think we had an absolutely amazing committee of fellows, advisory committee of fellows that worked with us to bring what you have in front of you together. We spent 4 meetings together, and we touched on a lot of topics on soil erosion, what guys have seen in the past, because we had a couple fellas that have farmed here their entire lives. We've had a couple fellas that were relatively new. We talked a lot about the different intensities of crops when it comes to working the soil, and you know how things have kind of changed over the years. And this is kind of where we ended up. The first draft we kind of thought might have been a little bit too intrusive into people's everyday activities, and would have been very labor intensive for Ag Services to even kind of manage, just because they had us, or the wording initially had us kind of trying to take stock in the different cropping practices that were happening on individual properties, you know, trying to figure out what areas might be susceptible to soil erosion before that happened. And it just kind of came down to that would be a near impossible task, because even sometimes the same practice on one parcel of land might not have the same effect as on a different parcel of land, just based on soil structure, wind intensity in that area, that kind of thing. So I think what we've come up with is reasonably accomplishable. There still is a potential for some change, but because this is the council that allowed us to go down the advisory committee route, and was obviously here to make some of the decisions this spring, we thought we would garner some of your intellect before you were gone. So I hope when you look at it, you can see that, you know, there is a commitment of resources certainly on Ag Services, but I think it's manageable. As well as when we look at the corrective measures, you know, whether they're all there currently or not, you know, whether you think those were okay for us to kind of move forward with. So that's kind of why we're here today.
Thank you, Todd. Lionel.
Yeah, good morning, Todd. The only thing I questioned a little bit was under policy guidelines number 4. So a minimum of 20 tons of manure to be applied after harvest, followed by deep tillage. And the deep tillage segment of that I questioned myself. I had quite a bit of experience with manure applications and whatnot over the years. And the deep tillage I thought was counterproductive for this. For these guidelines. And
yeah, and we talked pretty heavily on a lot of things, and I guess where it kind of come down to it a little bit is that the deep tillage tends to bring up more lumps in the soil, which helps for the soil erosion. And again, that's where we didn't want to get specific like this, because sandier soils require a different tillage mechanism than clay soils, than lighter, you know what I mean? So it's even having that in there, and it might not be in that final recommendation, which is great that you even brought it up. But we know that when you apply manure, according to AOPA, you have to incorporate it. And we just wondered if that deep tillage should be part of that as the incorporation mechanism versus maybe a lighter tillage.
They allow you not to till if you're going to a minimum tillage program. So you can actually leave it on the surface.
And I 100% agree with that, except that typically our soil erosion concerns aren't on the minimum or no-till situations. They're more in the more intensive tillage operations. But yeah, it's a good point for sure. And I brought a pen, so I'm taking notes.
Excuse me, thanks, Lionel. Other suggestions? Brian?
Well, not a suggestion, more of a question. When you come to right at the top, it says inspections shall be carried out annually in August. So what determines the criteria for an inspection? Is it, like you just mentioned, that it's an intensive crop that's been harvested that needs that tillage, or like when does it fall in? When does that say must be carried out, shall be carried out? So that's not a maybe, that's a has to be.
Yeah, and I think the next 5 years are going to be very difficult for us for sure, because we're going to have a lot of conversations. We started this spring off and this process off by doing a very thorough inspection in April, and we've outlined the areas that had erosion occur this year. So our thoughts were that, being that we have that information, could we add to that information if it's in August, so we know we have a certain quarter section that had problems the year before. This year it's into a crop that requires either a lot of tillage or doesn't leave a lot of cover going into the fall, or zero opportunity to get some green cover going into the fall. So then we would have some information to maybe discuss with the producer what the plans are to keep that erosion from occurring. We would have some plans to maybe implement something that would not leave it open to erode, I guess. And it doesn't have to be August, it can be September. Certainly this year we've seen a lot of crops off in August, but that doesn't always happen. But
Kelly?
Get your pen out. Mine, yeah. In page 2, you're gender specific. I would remove his.
good idea.
Any other suggestions? Wayne?
Just a comment, Todd. I've noticed this year with potato farmers and a lot of the producers that had land moving last spring, they've worked it, but they haven't, it's green now. They've been leaving it alone. Hey, it's early in the year. They might work it still again, but I'm thinking a lot of these guys learned a lesson from last spring and they're leaving some cover on that land this year. I'm hoping they don't. I mean, they do leave it there because right now a lot of that land looks like it'll be okay for next spring. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we learned, or I learned certainly going through this process with the 5 producers that we had, is that nobody likes to see their land blow. They didn't do it on purpose. Mother Nature just didn't give us the type of year that we were expecting. And I have noticed that there is some guys that have worked. I've noticed a lot of great things too. There's a ton of green field. I actually had a picture from one fella that he had rowed his beans and then immediately went and planted cover crop in between the rows, which I thought was a pretty fantastic idea. And the other thing I have noticed, because people have been calling, they're wondering what their neighbor's doing. And they're wondering about, you know, if we should be having that conversation or if they should be having that conversation. And there's certainly more pressure locally for these fellas, I think, or anybody, farmers in general, whether they are fella or non-fella. But more locally from their neighbors than there will ever be from Todd at the County of Newell, right? And I think there's a lot of great conversations happening, and I'm hoping that, you know, change happens naturally for the people that don't want to make it on their own.
Good point. Peer pressure. Hubie.
Well, some of these guys aren't livestock producers, so, and if their land blows, they're going to have to purchase manure from somewhere to put it on the land, so there'll be another expense for those guys to save their land.
Yeah, and I think any reactive process is going to be an expense you didn't necessarily want that year. So in my opinion, if there was a way to have all these proactive processes in place, then we wouldn't have those unexpected costs. And we talked heavily about that as well, because of the different you know, natures of farm business and the length of time they've been in the area, and maybe even just the amount of annual ongoing payments that these people have to make. You know, everybody's in a different spot. So one farmer might be able to afford, you know, a $50,000 bill to spread manure. The next one, that might be an extreme measure. But I think that's when we leave it a little bit open-ended on the corrective measures or even the preventative measures, we can leave it open to have that discussion with each individual farmer and come up with a plan that's right for their operation too.
Any other thoughts? Ellen?
Yes, I have a question under policy guidelines. Now, landowners will be notified prior to entry into their fields, if needed. Should they not always be notified since it's private property? Just wondering, Todd.
Not necessarily according to legislation, they might not be needed to be notified, because we do have the right of entry at a reasonable hour. That's not typically where we hang our hat, though, Ellen. We usually like to have the conversation with the landowner first, and I think we're hoping that we don't have to go into a field if a field is eroding where we have to step in and take reactive measures. I mean, that's going to be that should be evident from the road. You know what I mean? That I think the if needed is more if we even have to go into the field, we want to make sure we talk to the landowner first. Does that help to clarify?
Absolutely, and I did notice that you always be careful with getting no contamination into the field, correct? Like, i.e., of course, club root is a concern, and any other diseases that could be spread, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the always a concern for us, because we tend to be maybe in more than one field in a day. So we want to make sure that we are protecting our farmers from one to the other for sure.
Thank you, Todd.
Which you've been doing always, because you've been in lots of fields looking for all sorts of things over the years.
Yeah, I would say that we're pretty good at it for sure, and especially when we're doing surveys that we literally have to be in field after field after field. We definitely do that for sure.
I'm not seeing any other hands, so going back to the options, I've sort of lost track. Have we made any actual changes except for the removal of his?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't necessarily say much for changes, but some stuff to bring back, even just to the committee to discuss a little bit more. I mean, the tillage was a great thing to discuss, and it just gets down into the specifics of it. Even you know, Brian brought up the August. That's very specific, August. For me, August is a great month because we have more resources. If we get into September, our resources start to go back to school. So then you're really staring at Todd to go and do some surveys, and that doesn't always work. But it's just, I think it's great things to bring back, and certainly the being more gender neutral would be okay by policy standards for sure. I mean, I'm not going anywhere, I'm hoping, but.
Clarence?
So these August inspections, what are you looking for?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like I mentioned, we currently have some data where we've had erosion in the past. And I think being that we know that those areas are susceptible now, we want to kind of be ahead of the game and have the conversations. So if we go out and we've noted that on this certain quarter section, that last year we had erosion problems in whatever the case may be for a crop, and that producers farming practices, you know, if the next year they have a heavily, I'm just trying to, I guess, maybe try to talk too politically, but so if they have a crop that needs a lot of heavy cultivation or a lot of work that has to happen, we know that is going to create the potential for soil erosion the next year. So I think that the idea is to make proactive plans instead of reactive plans. So that's why if somebody worked their land really heavy and then it went into potatoes the next year, which we know is a heavily, it's a intrusive kind of production program, we know we have to be mindful of those areas for erosion, right?
So you're saying you're looking in August basically to see where things are at highest risk?
That's the idea, yes.
Okay. I mean, you know, there's lots of potatoes being dug right today, so I mean...
And it's not always potatoes.
No, but I mean, just giving an example, I mean...
Yeah.
And what happens, how is that handled? Nothing, inspection in August doesn't change that.
No, it doesn't, but it maybe just allows us to have that conversation with that producer before the neighbor or anybody notifies us that the land may be blowing.
So then am I safe to say that option 1 is what we would be doing today, accepting as information and recommending to bring back the option 2, accept as information and make changes or discuss as recommended? Is that to bring back? Yep. Okay. Thank you, Todd. We'll go with that, and we'll quickly go back on our agenda. Thank you. Or forward, actually, to item 11.2, additional costs to the fire engine, Scandia Fire, and Stuart is online.
Good morning, everybody. So, Fire Emergency Services seeking approval to amend an increase to the current budget for the Scandia Fire engine. During our last council meeting, we had discussions about Duchess pupper engine and adding 2 new devices to that truck on the build that's currently happening with that truck. It was asked of me if the same devices were on this new Scandia truck that we were building. So I did some inquiring and checked my tender that came back, and the ground sweeps was not on the tender. So I got a price from Acres to see how much that would cost for us to get that added. The good news is it was the cheaper of the 2 items that I asked for in Duchess, and the pricing came back at $3,586.39 plus GST. The original budget before tender project was $430,000. Council approved to Acres Industries $430,000. So with this new approval, we would end up $3,586.39 over the $430,000 budget. With that, therefore, it is the recommendation of Rural Fire and Emergency Services and the Fire Chief of Scandia that Council approve the increased budget to the increase the budget in the amount of $3,586.39, and the total cost of this project now would end up being $433,586.39 in the capital replacement is where we would get these additional funds from. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have them right now.
Clarence?
I'll make that motion because one fire and that we have this equipment on grass is going to save that money multiple times. So it's a very cheap investment for fighting grass fires. And so I think it's definitely a necessity in our areas.
Thanks, Clarence. Anne-Marie?
So a question to follow up on what Clarence was saying. The old truck that they have in Scandia, where is that going to go? And I'm assuming it also needs this equipment on there.
Yeah, the old truck that Scandia has is going to go over to Bow City, and that fire engine currently is due for replacement in 2024. So it's only a couple years away. Currently, that truck does have a front monitor on it, and I do believe it has the ground sweeps as well. I think when they ordered that truck, it did have it. I think it was just something that when we were trying to be prudent with our costs when we were originally looking at the minimum standard, all the fire chiefs really didn't include those, to which ultimately I think it was a miss, and I think the good news now is it's on and set for all the trucks going forward here.
Fine with that, Anne-Marie? Yeah. All right, seeing no other questions, we have a motion on the floor to approve this increase in budget made by Clarence. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Stuart. Oh, Kelly?
Madam Reeve, if I may, at our last meeting during committee reports, I spoke to you about ambulance service, and while Stuart is here, I wondered if we could ask him for an update on conversations or meetings that maybe he's had since that time.
Okay. Just in watching our time, Cole still has to report, and we have an 11 o'clock delegation. We were late with Stuart coming, so I know there has been a meeting that I couldn't get hooked up to, but maybe Stuart can give us a quick version.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Reeve and Councillor Kelly. Yeah, really quick. We had a meeting last week with AHS officials. It was all the CAOs in the County of Newell and myself, and we had a conversation about leg times, timing out of personnel, and issues in whole with the AHS ambulance service right now. At the end of the day, Tony, the lead off of the meeting, said that they were working on solutions. They were going to try and come up with solutions, but really didn't give a good timeline to it. And they do recognize that there is a bit of an issue. But according to the PowerPoint that he showed to, I think, numbers that I had, I don't think things looked exactly the same the way he was presenting it to what I have on call sheets from rip and runs. So at this time, we're just working very hard at trying to rectify this, get it fixed as soon as possible. But just to interject, it's not just the County of Newell. I think this is a provincial issue, and I think and other municipalities have shared that they are having the same problems. So my firm belief is that we need to, at the politician level, start raising concerns to the province so that hopefully this can get fixed somehow. That's kind of the quick down and dirty of it.
So Stuart, just quickly, yes or no, is there anything we can do to help you? I appreciate you with this update. Thank you. Is there anything we can do to help?
Yeah, at this time, unless there was a letter of support that would go to our MLA to send to the province, I think that's probably the biggest action that we might want to take at this time. And I think Matt has had a conversation with the group about possibly doing something like that. So working with Matt through you guys, hopefully we can maybe get something done there. So, but at this time, I think that's about all we can do. And I'll just keep track of times and delays that are still happening. Bassano just the other day had a 34-minute wait for ambulance to come, and at the end of the day, it turned out that the family just transported the patient to the hospital. So to me, that's a huge fall down on our service. When someone calls for an ambulance should be coming readily available, and it is understandable on how far out rural areas like the corners of Gem and the corner of Rolling Hills and stuff like that, that there are delays and waits. But when it's right in the town of Bassano, which is the best example, and you got to wait 34 minutes for a service that's supposed to be there, you know, that needs to be fixed. I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to stop.
Matt?
Yeah, so I was able to sit in on that meeting with Tony from AHS, and he was going to take some of the numbers, the statistics that Stuart had collected, specific to our area, run through them, and then my understanding is Stuart is expecting some information back from Tony. One of the key things that stood out to me speaking with Tony is that when we do send a letter to the minister and CCR MLA, we want to make sure that the statistics that we're using are the same ones that he'll be feeding back to the minister when he comes and asks, are these accurate? So that's kind of the piece of information we're waiting on before we author a letter so that it's legit. But I think there were some pretty good insights that Tony shared in that meeting, percent of time that the ambulance is out of service. I think for August it was 14% of the time, and he said, you know, it's going to be, you're never going to be 100% in service, you know, maybe around 1%. So 14% is orders of magnitude above a 1% out of service. So once we get that information back from Tony, I will be working with council to get a letter off.
Thanks, Matt. This has been a problem forever. It's interesting. It sort of cycles, changes, and we're back at it. So,
yeah. And if I can interject one thing, sorry. If I could just interject one more thing there, Madam Reeve. Today, the ambulance service in Brooks, there's only one ambulance here, and I'm told that they're timed out in Bassano. So I don't know if that's 100% true fact, but it's coming from a pretty reliable source. That's where they're at today. So you know, during the day, you know, when there should be two, and there's only one, and to their defense a little bit, some of it has to do with COVID and missing personnel and stuff like that. So, but that's where we're at today.
All right. We'll move on to our, thank you, Stuart.
Yeah. Could I interject just one more thing, Madam Reeve? I know you need to get to the regional water there, but I know that this is your last council today. And on behalf of the fire services, we thank each and every one of you for all your hard work on council over the last while. I've truly enjoyed our interjections over the last 2 years since I've taken on this position, and we are all, as a collective body of fire chiefs, very pleased with the apparatus and equipment that council has provided us over the years. So thank you very much.
And you're very welcome, Stuart. You got a fine group of people that you're working with, and hopefully we'll be able to continue getting members. And I also hope that some of them are getting vaccinated as I speak.
Yes.
I can say things like that today. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the NRSC operations report. And Cole, welcome, Cole. Thank you for your patience. As always, it seems recently.
You're very welcome, Madam Reeve. Thank you for allowing me to present my report. I'll get right into it to make it a little quicker and so you can get to your ongoing matters. We'll start with the Hamlet distribution systems. We are still waiting for parts for pump number 2 in the Rolling Hills distributions pump house. There is no current ETA for that, but I will be checking in on it again this week to see if they do have a date nailed down. We do have 2 pumps still operating in that pump house, so we're not really worried about any outages or anything like that. So we just would like to get that rectified sooner rather than later if we can. So I will get on the contractor to make sure that gets fixed as fast as we can. Lead testing. We have completed all the lead testing within the county of Newell for all the hamlets and all the rural areas that we have. So that's good news. That was completed on time. We don't have all the results yet. We're waiting on 3 rural areas still to come back from the laboratory. As far as results go, we did have 1 lead result that was higher than the maximum allowable concentration, and it was in a rural residence just north of Rolling Hills. Here again, this is all having to do with the homeowner's property and the equipment in their household. It's an older house, and it's up to them to rectify the situation. So we are providing them with a full information packet on what they should do next, what the results were. But only having 1 over the maximum allowable in the whole county so far is really good news. So it's being addressed and taken care of, and it's a good thing, what we've seen so far. All our summer field water analysis has been completed. So there again, we do quarterly laboratory analysis of the water in the county's water systems. So that's been completed. We'll be looking to do our fall maintenance soon. That includes fire hydrant flushing and lift station cleaning. So that'll be completed in the next few weeks. For wastewater, the LNR force main air release valves have been checked, and the maintenance is completed on those. We've also checked the manholes that the air release valves are in, and we had them hydrovac'd out. So that whole system is working as it should be. The Patricia sewer lines have been visually inspected, and everything is functioning properly. As we can recall that there has been some issues in the past, so we've been keeping a very close eye on that. So everything looks good there. We will be discharging the Tilly and Patricia wastewater lagoons during the 3rd week of October. I believe today is when the ID is shutting off their water to their customers. So we have to wait until that's completed, and we have to give 2 weeks notice to all downstream landowners from the canals that we're discharging into. So that process is being completed right now. So hopefully before the end of October, all the lagoon discharges will be complete for the year. And at the water plant, the NRSC water plant, we've done our water analysis as well, and that's all completed, and we're observing normal operations now. I just would like to make note too that we've noticed a definite improvement in the aesthetics of the water quality. The taste and odor issues seems to be clearing up slowly but surely. Brooks has been a lot better for a few weeks now, and then I'm noticing out in the north, in the Dutchess area, it's starting to get better as well. So what we were experiencing after the hot months we had over the summer, the water quality is getting better. And that's the end of my report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a whole bunch. Believe it or not, Clarence.
When you get a positive lead test in a home, do you do a second test just to verify?
Yes, we do. And that is being conducted today. And it's a little more, there's a different way about going and doing it. So we will be collecting more water, and what they'll do is they'll run it for 2 minutes straight. They'll shut it off for a half an hour and let the heavier lead metals to settle out, and then take a 2-liter sample and then send that 2-liter sample off to the lab. So it's a little different than the initial sampling that we did, but that's all laid out for us in the guidelines from Alberta Environment. So we're following that right now, and then once the new results come in, we'll see where they're at, and then there's an information packet that we give to the homeowners and how they can rectify the situation.
Thanks, Stuart. Cole. Hey, on the lead test thing, so if you live in an old house, you mentioned this was an old property, is there a way you can just have your, can you get a kit on your own to do these tests, or have somebody come in, or how does that work?
So if you weren't part of the testing that we conducted, by all means, it is very simple for a homeowner to go and do this themselves. There are several accredited laboratories within Alberta that do lead testing. So it'll be simple as contacting their customer service department and requesting lead sampling bottles, and then they should be able to help you out as far as how to take them, and then they'll usually give you a cooler and everything for you to ship them back to them, and they will analyze it and let you know what the results are.
So does AHS do that? Or environment, like it used to be that you could do that with wells and I guess household water, this would be a separate test from that?
Yes, I think it would be better to go through an independent laboratory, because ProvLab through the province only does a certain amount of things, and they're quite busy with bacteriological testing and things like that. So your best results will probably come from, and that's who we do. We do an independent third-party laboratory. We don't go through the province.
Thank you for that. The other thing I smile about was the water, the aesthetics of the water, because this was a camp fire conversation, and I said something about how long it took for the water to get from Brooks to Bassano, which turned into a huge argument. The last time we met with you, I thought you said, you gave us a number of days from Brooks to Bassano for the water to take to get there. Can you remember what the number of days was that you quoted?
It is 8 days from the time that it leaves the plant to the time it hits Bassano. And that can be longer if you're in certain far-reaching areas of the county, and depending on usage and stuff like that. So it can take an extremely long period of time for everything to work its way through the system. And we've noticed that before when we've had residual where we needed to get it up or down, or adjustments. So we make adjustments at the water plant, and sometimes it can take an extremely long period of time for the entire system to change. So it's just part of the amount of storage that's on hand in the different communities, as well as the amount of volume and all the pipes that the county has installed over the years. It's an astronomical number, and people don't really realize that. It takes a very long time to to completely switch out the water that's in the system.
Perfect. Kelly.
Cole, in the same vein, aesthetics, but bring it to our home water storage system. Should we drain our water storage system on occasion, or will that aesthetic problem eventually just dissipate? Although it would take longer, I suppose, if we didn't spill the water, right?
Correct. So depending on how much storage you have and how long it'll take. So once the water that is aesthetically better reaches your house, then you'll have to go through the amount that you have in storage. So obviously, if you were to clean out your cistern, it'd be changed faster, but you can just let it go. It's here again, I can't stress it enough. It is completely potable and completely safe for consumption. It's just unpleasant depending on where you were at and how bad you had it, but we're definitely seeing improvements in the city of Brooks now. It's been several weeks that people say they can't even notice it anymore, so it's working its way through, and hopefully it'll be everywhere in the county will be back to normal.
Any other questions? Thanks, Stuart. I'm still laughing about the campfire conversation. Cole, thank you, Cole. Thank you for your diligence and your information. And certainly over the years, I've learned to trust your knowledge and your information. So thank you for the great work you do for us all in the County of Newell.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I would just like to say it's been great working with you and all the councillors that are currently there. And I know a lot will be moving on to something different. And there again, I'm very happy that we got to work together, and I wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart. Cole. Hey, I just worry about what you said. We'll be moving on to different endeavors, so that sort of stresses me out a little bit. But other than that, and forgetting that your name is Cole, have a great day, and thank you, Cole.
You're welcome. Take care.
You also. We'll move to item. It's our 11 o'clock delegation, and that is at item 9.1. And we have Amanda from the town of Bassano online with us to give us an update on their recreation. As you know, or you remember, they embarked on some fairly big mission to look at some of their ways of doing things, so we were curious to find out how things are going. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Madam Reeve and Council. I don't like not being right in your chambers. It's hard to see what everybody's doing over there, so if you need anything, you'll have to speak up on this end. Thank you for having me in here this morning to just give an update on the status of the Recreation and Leisure Master Plan. If you recall, we spent a number of hours together in April when I had made a presentation to you regarding, how recreation was originally going, where we were planning to go with our Recreation and Leisure Master Plan, as well as capital project updates. So today I would just like to bring back to the forefront that we have been implementing the master plan for the past 5 months. And this originally stemmed from our strategic plan and looking at ways to bridge the recreation gap. So the implementation had 3 initial phases. We were looking to do engagement and collaboration with our user groups, develop and implement ways to decrease operating expenses at our facilities to maximize operational funds, and then finally maximizing programming opportunities at the Bassano facilities. So through our recreation representative, which I'm sure all of you are well aware of, is Irv Moray, and our administration team, we started addressing the master plan with user groups at an informal level. So it's been discussed with them. People are aware that it's going to come out, but we haven't really dug into the operating agreements that we have in place. Instead, we focused on 4 main areas that align with the engagement component, as well as looking at ways to decrease our operating expenses. So as mentioned back in April, we were looking at submitting an energy efficiency grant through the MCCAC. The purpose of that was to upgrade the lighting at our facilities, being the curling course, or sorry, the curling club, the golf club, and the arena and pool. So we have completed that investigation and submitted the application to MCCAC. It has been passed through the preliminary review phases and now is under a formal review. So the estimated cost of that project upgrade is roughly $50,000, and the program will cover up to 75% of that. So if this is passed and approved, then we will be replacing all of the interior and the exterior lighting at the facilities, which will significantly decrease the lighting expenses for the user groups. I don't have all of the finite numbers for you today, but I would say that it will cut down roughly 15% of their power bill. The next thing that we have focused on is that we have continued to dedicate time to our user groups to navigate the COVID restrictions and requirements to allow them to develop operational plans, which has taken quite a bit of our time and has been successful. Successful in the fact that people are now phoning our office asking for guidance, whereas previously we didn't necessarily have that steady relationship with our user groups. In addition, we have focused on developing a youth leadership and development plan for the Bassano pool to ensure that we're engaged with the school and building long-term resiliency plans to ensure that we have lifeguards moving through the program and they can have proper leadership and development skills after they leave the town. And then finally, we had been working for 10 to 12 months on securing a lease with an art space in our community. And what we ended up settling on is the meeting room at our community hall has now been leased out to 2 residents in the community to open a private art space. We've started on a 1-year lease, and it will bring in $4,650 per year in income. That's significant because we budget on average $11,000 per year for income at the community hall. So 50% of that will now come from the meeting room. What that does for us is it now allows for a private art space, new sources of revenue, and this group will be running a number of different programs for residents within the community, and it has brought new life to our hall, the green space, and is part of the revitalization of our main street. So those are just 4 of some of the accomplishments we've made over the past 5 months, and there's a lot more to go. So really the intent today is we're still hoping to receive an endorsement from the County of Newell for the Recreation and Leisure Master Plan to allow us to promote this under both of our banners. And that's really where we're at. Are there any questions?
Questions from council?
No questions. Okay. Well, that's all that I had. Yeah, that's all that I had for the presentation today. We'll be in a better position this year to present true budget costs over the next 3 years in consultation with your administration. And we do fully intend to continue to implement this plan because it's doing a lot of great things for residents in our communities and it's changing lives for people. And that also aligns with the collaboration and partnerships that we've formed together over the past few years with the county. So we couldn't be more grateful for that.
All right. Everybody fine? Thanks, Amanda, for your work and your communication update on the what you're up to in Bassano with recreation. Carry on. Good luck with it.
Thank you, and best of luck to everybody as you move on or stay, or however that goes. It's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay. So we have our public hearing commencing at 11:30. So we have some time. So we'll go back to Maria, perhaps, where we left off, the planning and development report, if Maria is available. There was some information in there on Solarcraft and what they are up to. I had somebody ask me about Solarcraft just recently, actually.
Hi, thank you.
And this isn't necessarily for Maria, this question, Madam Reeve. And in regards to the previous question that Tracy asked about removing the panels from the permitting process, at what point in time do they get added to the, does that cost, the value of the panels get added to the infrastructure so they can be taxed on that basis, because we tax them on assessment? So is it at the time they turn the switch on and it begins generating, or is there some other point along the line that we have to be aware of?
Yeah, switch on, and as of October 31st, I believe, is the cutoff.
I just noticed something here, and something to reminder, you guys all have your microphones turned to the maximum volume along the right-hand edge of your doodads there, because it really makes a difference for the rest of us around the table when that is up to max. Okay, on that PD Planning and Development report, there was also information on Solarcraft in there, and then there is quite a bunch of information as well regarding Solarcraft. So, Maria, did you want to talk to that a bit?
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I was just bringing it up again. So Solarcraft has an application in with AUC. It is currently in abeyance, meaning it's on hold because Solarcraft needs to work on reducing the potential effects on wildlife and the environment. Right now, the AUC is saying their application as presented creates a significant effect to the environment, and therefore they're not willing to approve it. So that gives Solarcraft the opportunity to do some changes. They've added some new lands that are on the east side of the 36, so that they can mitigate some wetlands and some wildlife areas. And so that's where it is. I guess their Solarcraft is working, and the AUC will wait until they've provided some updated information.
Rather intriguing that they've added more land to that. So that's part of their mitigation, so that, yeah, I don't understand quite what that might mean. Brian?
Well, I'm not suggesting that I do, but it's, I know that they're much more sensitive to native grasslands than they are to cultivated land. So I suspect some of the reason for them as to moving across the highway is so that fit more into the acceptability of it. I guess the question that I had is, and I was trying to read through this but I didn't come across. So the new application, how will that affect the megawatts that they're expecting to generate? It used to be 400. Have they changed that number at all, or do we have that information?
I unfortunately don't have that exact information, but it is my understanding that the increasing their land bases so that they can maintain that megawattage, I guess, that they've applied for. But then they have more flexibility to develop around wetlands versus through wetlands like they originally had planned.
Any other questions? Clarence.
So Maria, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but when I was reading between the lines, I would look at these lands which are now native grass, and if it was an agricultural person, i.e. a farmer who wants to plant wheat in there, I don't think he needs a permit to break it. You could actually go in there and grow crops on it for a year, turn around and make yourself a whole pile of money by selling it to somebody who wants to put solar panels on it. Is that a true assessment of where we're at in this world?
That's a big question for a young person. I mean, from an old person to a young person.
I think that assessment is accurate. Private landowners have the ability to utilize the land to the best of their ability. For a solar farm being an industrial use requiring AUC approval, they look at social, environmental, and economic aspects when they do the approval. Native prairie is very important lands. So when you look at it from a provincial perspective, they maybe look at native prairie a little bit differently than a farmer or a person who is looking to get the biggest bang for their buck, so to speak. But I'm not sure that how politically correct that answer was.
I was just shaking my head at it, that's all. I think that's exactly where it's at, and it's nuts.
Anything else? Lionel?
Well, just to add a little bit to that, the comment that Clarence just made, that agricultural piece that they're going to go to across the highway was exactly that. It was the same, it was prairie. And I remember when it was broke, I know the guy that broke it. There were no permits, they were not concerned about wildlife. They broke all that ground, and that's exactly what Clarence is saying. Made no difference.
Yes. Brian?
Just wanted to make a motion to accept the planning and development report, Madam Reid.
Thank you for that motion, Brian. Seeing no other hands up or questions, all in favor?
Sorry, Madam Reeve, I'd like to just add one thing. Private landowners do need to be aware of wetlands within the area, and no one can just farm right through a wetland. So there is provincial policy on wetlands and endangered species. So while you can cultivate lands at your discretion, everyone does need to pay attention to those policies as well. So thank you.
Thank you for that educational moment. It's important for people to know things like that. Possibly goes for even native grass drylands. when people start to plow that up and plant crops when the years are wet, and then all of a sudden a year like this comes along and it's like, that didn't work as well as I hoped. So anyhow, we do have a motion on the floor which was passed to accept the planning and development report. So thank you, Maria. And we'll move on to the Shortgrass Library System, the budget approval. Item 11.3, more or less moving forward in our agenda. And Matt, it's pretty straightforward. Or that was Lane, wasn't it?
Yeah. Good morning, Council. Yes, this is a fairly straightforward request from the Shortgrass Regional Library System. They have been in the habit of circulating their budgets and are looking for formal approval from Council. What they have circulated this year is just a budget that's coming in at a 1% increase over last year. Certainly very reasonable. It's possible that Councillor Chrisman would have some comments to share, but we're recommending that Council approve the budget at this time. The other alternative is to simply refer it to the 2022 budget discussions with the new Council after the election.
Any questions of Lane or of our Shortgrass rep? Kelly? Brian?
Well, it's more of a question about process, and I think you touched on it a little bit. So just for a matter of argument's sake, let's say the recommended budget was a 10% increase, which is huge. And we said, well, we're just going to saddle the next council with this. What would be their options? Because ultimately the next council will pass the budget. So they would be saddled with something that we deemed appropriate at our level. Is there any ramifications for that, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Well, and that's certainly a good question. And I'm not sure what to suggest as far as an appropriate response in this situation. A motion that is made by a council is binding. And if this council was to approve a budget that had a 10% increase, then the next council would be bound by that decision. So I guess that's one thing that needs to be taken into consideration by any council whenever they're making a motion, regardless whether it's early in their mandate or late in their mandate, as in this case.
Thank you, Lane. Kelly?
So it's not, and that's a what if, first off. I want to remind you all that we did come in with a 5% cut last year. And I want that to be noticed or reminded, you to be reminded of it. We are coming back, the Shortgrass Trustee Board are coming back with a 1% increase this year. So I think that's reasonable, that's recovering during a time when finances were very unstable last year. And so I would like to make a motion to approve this budget and allow the Shortgrass Board to continue with their annual planning in a timely manner.
And if we talk for 2 minutes longer, it'll cost the ratepayers more for us than the amount that the increase is going to be. So I think we should support this motion. Are there any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you to Shortgrass, and I think our library system has probably been more used and more appreciated during the last year and a half than by some of us anyhow. So great, thank you. Kelly, pass on our thank you to your board. Okay, we will move to our public hearing commencing now. So we need a motion to move in camera. Yes. Public hearing. My focus today is a little bit off for some reason. Okay, we're going to move into public hearings. We need a motion, Anne-Marie.
I'll make a motion to go into public hearing.
Thank you. All in favor of going into this public hearing? Opposed? Motion is carried. And as always, when we go into a public hearing, it is to get information to base a decision on. And so we'll get information first from our Supervisor of Planning and Development. And I do know that someone very familiar to us all, two people actually very familiar to us all, are on life size with us today, Diane Horvath and Yvonne Kosh. So welcome to those ladies. And we'll go back to Maria because I don't think we need to do introductions. Two of our counselors are on life size also, Tracy and Ellen, just so everyone is aware of that. Go ahead, Maria.
Thank you, Madam Reeve. This public hearing is for Subdivision Authority Bylaw 2018-21. The purpose of this bylaw is to delegate the subdivision authority, outline the powers and duties, membership, and voting requirements of the subdivision authority. It defines the responsibilities of the secretary, and it also houses policy regarding the subdivision of agricultural lands within the county. The proposed bylaw offers administration the flexibility to recommend subdivisions that make sense based on historical decisions of MPC and in turn reduces the red tape. First reading was given to this bylaw on September 9th. The county received notification from Cypress County, Wheatland County, the MD of Tabor, and ATCO Electric, and there were no comments or concerns offered. The Village of Dutchess did submit a letter to Council stating their concerns with the proposed bylaw. I've summarized the concerns and briefly discussed the county administration perspective on these concerns in the RFD. County administration agrees with the Village of Dutchess that our intermunicipal development plan requires an update. The current IDP references subdivision policy found in Land Use Bylaw 1755-12, and this bylaw was rescinded in 2017. The proposed bylaw in front of you today would allow for one subdivision from an unsubdivided quarter section of land within the Agriculture General District. Any additional subdivisions would require a land use redesignation. The land use redesignation within the IDP boundaries with the village would require consultation with the village, 3 readings of council, and a public hearing. There is also policy in the IDP that an area structure plan is required prior to the redesignation of land, which would also require consultation with the village, 3 readings of council, and a public hearing. The IDP also states that all subdivision applications within the IDP boundary are circulated to the Village of Dutchess for comment and consideration before any decision is made by the Municipal Planning Commission. The village is concerned with the premature fragmentation of agricultural lands. All municipal planning commissions are mandated to make informed decisions based on policy in the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the intermunicipal development plans, and the municipal development plan of the County of Newell. All of these plans provide policy to ensure the integrity of agricultural lands. In the letter, the Village of Dutchess requests consideration for the implementation of a new land use district, which was attached to the letter. They have also requested that Council defer further readings of this subdivision bylaw until further consultation with the village occurs. As this is a public hearing for Subdivision Bylaw 2018-21, and Land Use Bylaw 2016-21 has already been adopted, there is no opportunity today to implement this modified fringe district as requested by the Village of Dutchess. Deferring the second and third reading of this subdivision bylaw would result in the county having no subdivision policy within the Dutchess IDP area or within the county. Administration understands the concerns raised by Dutchess, and we look forward to reviewing and amending the intermunicipal development plan to ensure that the county and the village make land use decisions together that will protect and benefit both municipalities. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions of Maria's information for Maria? No. And Jeff, did you have anything further to add?
I do not. I think Maria summed it up very well.
All right. Oh, Anne-Marie?
I'm just wondering if a date has been set to discuss the IDP with the Village of Dutchess and the other municipalities too, I think.
Yes, we actually have a meeting with the Village of Rosemary and the City of Brooks to discuss in the next few weeks, actually, our intermunicipal development plans, and hopefully we can make a meeting with the Village of Dutchess soon. We haven't discussed it at this time.
Anything else? All right. Obviously, Diane and Yvonne are probably here to present today, not just listen. Am I accurate with that?
Great. Thank you, Reeve Douglas and members of council. Hopefully you can hear me through my mask. Thank you for the opportunity to address council on this matter. I know we were advised by county administration we only had 3 minutes to make our case. I'm hoping that you will indulge us to be able to maybe go through the concerns that perhaps are slightly different that were provided by county administration. Do I have permission to continue?
Absolutely, and I've never enforced the 3-minute mark in all my chairing of these things ever, so it won't start today.
Great, thank you. And for those that know me, I probably couldn't stay in the 3-minute mark. So I guess I wanted to just address the 4 points in the letter that the Village of Dutchess Council responded to the bylaw. I think the main thing, or point number 1, speaks to the relationship between the IDP and the policies that were formerly found in the land use bylaw that are now have been removed by the removal of the fringe. And the concern on behalf of the village is that that link no longer exists. And unfortunately, unless there was amendments to the IDP that in the case of the Village of Dutchess feels it should have happened prior to the removal of that fringe district. So in essence, the land use strategy that was part and parcel of that IDP has been gutted from the IDP. The second point is that the subdivision authority bylaw that we are currently having a public hearing for is not a statutory plan or a land use bylaw as described underneath the Municipal Government Act. And as such, there really is no requirement for the public hearing we're having today. It's nice to know that we had one, but councils in the future can change subdivision policy without a public hearing and any public consultation. And that is of concern to the village, because again, we will have no input into that decision. The third is that, again, as I mentioned, the subdivision authority bylaw is not a statutory plan or a land use bylaw that is acknowledged or thought of as a planning document when looking at appeals. So again, unless the policies are embedded into an IDP, there is no requirement for the Provincial Land and Property Rights Tribunal or a local subdivision and development appeal board to have any regard to the policies found in this bylaw. And finally, is the Section 6.A, which talks about a flexible parcel size of first parcel out from 0 acres to 80 acres of any size. And that's quite a departure from the previous 7-acre vacant or a farmstead to the extent of the improvements. And as such, Dutchess has some concern with regards of having 75-acre parcels or a 67-acre parcel put into a fringe area, which may impact future development and growth. I think that sort of summarizes the village's concerns. I'm happy to answer any questions if council has them. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Brian?
Well, my question is to our planning department, and that's mostly to clarify my understanding that how the IDP would function within the concerns that has been raised.
The IDP could house policy regarding the subdivision of farmsteads and single lot vacant to reflect the size that the village of Dutchess would be more comfortable with. And that could be a fairly easy amendment to the IDP. And then the village would have the ability to comment and appeal based on that.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Kelly?
So I'm not sure who wants to answer this. I'll throw it out. To me, this is a case of the chicken or the egg. We're working on our planning documents. We are definitely needing to update and follow our IDPs throughout the county. Can anybody correct me if I'm wrong? This is ongoing process that will happen, and all these concerns will be attended to in the 3 documents that we're working on. Is that correct?
I noticed Yvonne and Diane raised their hand there, but if I might just provide some comment, it is absolutely. The IDP is in fact a statutory plan, and it actually rests above our own municipal development plan and just under the provincial planning framework. So what our goal is and has always been in this creation of the subdivision authority bylaw was to move these subdivision policies in here out of our land use bylaw and get them in a different location for a number of reasons, which we don't need to get into. The concern being expressed again is that this bylaw is not a statutory plan. It is not does not require a public hearing to be changed, and that's totally understanded, and we understand that from county administration. Our concern is now today, if we don't read this bylaw through 2nd and 3rd reading, we will be kind of losing all of this policy. And this policy is stuff that we've spoke with the town of Bassano, the village of Rosemary, and the city of Brooks on putting into this bylaw. Now, if we don't read it through, we will lose any of this direction and policy for some period of time until we either update the intermunicipal development plan, or you know, if the council wishes, that we would go and reinstill some of these policies in our land use bylaw. So I don't know, in our opinion, that reading this bylaw through today is going to hurt one way or the other. We do know that we need to sit down with the village of Dutchess and get everybody's concerns squashed one way or another, and whether that's formalizing discussion and a minor update to the intermunicipal development plan, which would be county administration's preference, which we are moving forward with the city of Brooks, with the village of Rosemary, and I know Amanda at the town of Bassano does want to get into revisiting as well, but just time hasn't permitted for that yet. Or you know, we could again open up the land use bylaw going forward, but you know, those are two separate, one a statutory plan, one the land use bylaw that is nearly a statutory plan. There's not going to be much difference in process in amending those two, so we'd really like to move forward with diving into these intermunicipal development plan talks and ensuring that all of the concerns in that intermunicipal development plan area are covered off, and the county's comfortable and the village is comfortable with everything within those plans.
Thanks, Jeff. Diane or Yvonne?
Thank you. I guess my comment on that is that, again, it is about process and it is about chicken or egg. And I think in this particular case, the IDP is a negotiated document by two sets of elected officials that had determined the path forward. And unfortunately, by removing the French district, by changing the subdivision policies, that really should have been discussed prior to making changes in the land use bylaw, because the land use bylaw sits below the IDP. And so as such, it's about understanding how one flows to the other. And if you're making an amendment to a land use bylaw that has no effect on an IDP, then there usually isn't any pushback. When you're making a major change by removing the land use strategy and the way that land use is managed in an IDP, that's a major concern for a partnering municipality.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anything else? Wayne?
So what would be the process if we have first and second reading, or second and third reading today? Then you go into negotiations with the other municipalities. Do you have to bring it back to council to have those changes approved by council and then their councils also?
If we're looking at updating the intermunicipal development plan, then that will be two councils working together and will have to be adopted by council. Both councils, pardon me. We work in collaboration, yes.
Tracy?
So after the negotiations or the revisiting of the IDPs, if there's changes that need to be made to this subdivision authority bylaw, then amendments can be made after the fact. Is that not correct?
Heads are nodding, in case you can't see them, Tracy. Yes? Thanks, Tracy. I don't think we've had that many, correct me if I'm wrong, have we had a lot of these applications in this fringe area, or whatever we want to call it, in the past, that before we get to the IDP, there's going to be a stampede into the office to get things changed by residents?
Since my time here, and I realize that's not relatively long, we've had one boundary line adjustment as far as for a subdivision, and the first parcel out policy would affect 8 quarter sections out of the 36 within the intermunicipal development plan, one of those quarter sections being directly adjacent to Dutchess.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any further comments? Diane?
Thank you. I guess the chances are probably relatively low of having any kind of a application that causes problems. But all we need is one, and then we have a problem. So the lack of protection for the village of Dutchess is of great concern.
Kelly?
So, Madam Reeve, I'm just confused. Protection. The use of the word protection. It felt to me coming out that there's no trust. Is that accurate? Do I ask Diane that? It was her word. Okay, so Diane, is there a lack of trust between the county and Dutchess that we need to be aware of?
No, go ahead.
We still have a standing IDP plan that addresses all these, and we should be having these conversations. So are we at the point in our relationship that there is a trust issue here?
I would suggest that there's a lack of process that there is an issue with, and that the village feels that there should have been more consultation before the fringe district was removed, because that does impact. And in the absence of having policies negotiated between the two municipalities that would take the place of the fringe, we're left in a void.
Thank you.
I think it's been quite a lengthy process myself, but all right, anything else? Seeing no hands up, I need a motion for us to move out of our public hearing. Lionel will make that motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And the bylaws are there. If people wish to proceed with them. Brian?
I would like to make a motion, Madam Reeve, for second reading.
Any discussion on this motion? All in favor? Opposed? Tracy, did you vote? Oh, sorry, did you have a question? Sorry. No.
No, that's okay. I did just, I might have could add asked this in the public hearing, but it just kind of come to me. Is there a harm in delaying this process until the IDP is discussed with the Village of Dutchess? I think Maria talked a little bit about it, but if you could just reiterate the concern there with doing that.
I think it's because it ties in with our land use bylaw, which has been passed, but I'll hand it over to Maria.
Sure. So if the decision is, or if third reading isn't passed today, then this bylaw will be heard by a new council. And there's policy in the MGA that states that in order to vote on the third reading, you need to be present at the public hearing. So then that would essentially, the subdivision bylaw would have to be defeated, and then we would represent it to the new council.
I would like to make a motion for third reading. Oh, Let's hurry.
Tracy had her hand up and I called the question, so she's asked the question. We have the question answered now. Tracy, sufficient answer?
Yes, thank you. And I will waive in agreement.
Okay, so I'll call the question again. All in favor of second reading? Okay, motion is carried. And a motion for third reading. Lionel wanted to make that motion. So all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And on that note, I am sure that our staff will work diligently, as they have been, to get those IDP meetings going. And hopefully, particularly in Duchess's case, staff will be available on their behalf to get on this as fast as possible if their concerns are, so their concerns can be mitigated. Thank you. All right. Should we got 5 minutes? Yeah, why don't we take a break for lunch, seeing as our next item is 11.4. So we'll have a break till, how about 12:40? $12:35? Somewhere in that range. Thank you.